Welcome to Midnight Menopausal Meanderings, the place where insomnia meets insight, where the coffee is strong, the lights are low, and somewhere around 2 in the morning, we finally stop pretending we have it all figured out. I'm Lacy, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor, and I am tired tonight, my friends. If you find yourself awake tonight wondering who you are becoming, welcome. These aren't polished conversations. They're the ones that usually happen after midnight. So pour yourself something warm, get comfy, and let's wander together so we can feel a little bit better. Tonight, I want to ask you a question because it happened to me. What happens when the body you've lived in for 50 years suddenly becomes a stranger? Not because you're sick, but I do carry a congenital blood disease that is high risk and life threatening, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being injured. I'm not talking about an accident. Just one day you wake up and nothing feels familiar anymore. And you had just gotten stabilized. You see, nobody warned me about that. Everybody warned me about hot flashes. Nobody warned me about grief. Nobody warned me that I'd look in the mirror and think, gross, whose body is this? Now, before we get too serious, let's address the elephant in the room, or perhaps the boobs. Again, I have a congenital clotting disorder, and because of that, I am ineligible for any kind of help with menopause, which means surgical menopause hit me like a freight train. And apparently, my body decided to make up for the lack of estrogen by saying, you know what she really needs? She needs 40 double Ds. So I went from a 34B to a 40 double D in 1 year. I could have bought these if I wanted to. Not really, because I'm ineligible for elective surgery. Maybe I would have. I don't know. I didn't know women had big boob problems. Nobody tells you these things. Suddenly, bras became engineering projects. Your back starts filing complaints. You can't find a shirt that fits both your shoulders and your chest. They just won't button. You discover muscles and wiggles you didn't know existed because everything's angry now. And somewhere in the middle of laughing and crying, you're grieving. Because underneath the jokes, something much, much deeper is actually happening. And I think that's why menopause catches so many of us off guard. It is not just our hormones changing, it's that our entire being, on a cellular level, our identity does. And we spent decades learning our body. We know what it looks like, how it moves, how it feels, the size jeans we wear, the size bra we wear, what makeup works, what hairstyle flatters us. We become fluent in how we look in ourselves. And then menopause walks in like an uninvited house guest, moves all the furniture, changes the locks, and leaves us trying to figure out how to live in a house that no longer feels familiar. And we do not talk enough about this. We do not talk about the over 100 symptoms. We don't talk about identity. We don't talk about weight gain. We don't talk about mourning our old selves. We talk about hormones. We don't talk about the strain on your marriage, your partnership, your friendships, your relationships with your kids, because that's what it really is. It's a new relationship with your body. And when that relationship changes, everything changes. I spent most of my life believing my body was something to manage. I was an athlete, I was a competitive dancer as a kid. Then I moved into martial arts for 11 years. I wanted to improve it, perform it, make it acceptable. I was a martial arts instructor. I loved the feeling of being strong and hard. My body wasn't decoration, it was capable and confident, and it was pure power. Then menopause happened. I had many clots because of it: neuropathy, joint pain, insomnia, fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, anxiety, and depression that I had never experienced before, sometimes in the same day. There were mornings when getting dressed felt like trying someone else's life on because I didn't know which size pants I was going to be in that day. And here's what surprised me: it wasn't vanity. It wasn't. I've never been a vain person. That's what people assume. Oh, you're upset because you gained weight. No, I was upset because I couldn't find myself. There's a fucking difference. Identity isn't the same thing as appearance. Identity is something we recognize. It's looking in the mirror and saying, oh, there you are. And when you stop recognizing yourself, it shakes something much deeper than confidence. And I just wonder how many women are quietly carrying that grief without ever giving themselves permission to name it, because we're told it's normal. Yes, it's common. That doesn't mean it isn't hard. Those aren't opposites. Something else happened that I wasn't expecting. People started commenting on my body. You look healthier. You look filled out. You look thick. You look more feminine. You look softer. Isn't that fascinating? My husband loved it. Loves it. Other people thought I looked better. While I felt less like myself, I was always the skinniest person in the room before I put on 50 pounds in less than a year. It reminded me that identity isn't determined by applause, it's determined by recognition. I've spent years studying trauma. One thing trauma teaches us is adaptation. We become whoever we have to become to survive. And I think in menopause, we get asked a different question. It asks us, who are you without the body you've always relied on? And that is a terrifying question. But it might be a liberating one too. And what we do on here is ask better questions. And they change. Instead of trying to get my old body back, ask, how do I build a relationship with what I have today? And that is across the board, because those are completely different questions. One is nothing but resistance and pushing, and the other is flow and curiosity. Today, I made a funny post online, on LinkedIn actually, about my boobs. I'm hoping people laughed. I did get one message from a guy saying how clever it was, and not in a creepy way either. Humor matters. Humor lets us exhale. I think a lot of trauma gives you a very dark sense of humor. But I want people to be able to say, I'm not the only one. I recognize myself there. I've never told anyone this. These are the conversations that matter. Not because we have all the answers, but because we've become isolated. We're more connected, but more disconnected than we've ever been. Isolation shrinks when somebody finally says the quiet parts out loud. I recently had a podcast guest on for a conversation about pleasure and sensuality. Not sexuality, sensuality. There is a difference. Sensuality is inhabiting your body, feeling your feet on the ground, enjoying the warmth of the coffee, soft blankets, music, rain, sunlight, touch, presence. It's remembering that your body isn't just something people look at. It's something you get to live inside. It's yours, and that's a radical shift, and you get to make all the choices about it. This is new for some of us women. Maybe menopause isn't asking us to become younger. Maybe it's asking us to become more intimate with ourselves. Not because our bodies stayed the same, because they didn't. Can I love the body that has carried me through addiction and recovery in psychiatric hospitals and martial arts and pulmonary embolisms and grief and laughter and 50 years of surviving? Can I stop treating her like she's failing me and start thanking her for staying? The mean age of existence for my blood disease is 54, and I am 50. I do not have this figured out. Some mornings I still stand in front of the mirror and I negotiate, and my inner critic starts. And some days I miss my younger, different feeling body, the energy, the certainty. But now I'm beginning to think that home was never a size, a number, smooth skin. Home is learning to stop fighting the person looking back at me, the person living inside of me, with me, around me. If you're listening tonight and your body feels unfamiliar, remember this. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to laugh. You are allowed to be frustrated. And you are also allowed to discover that maybe, just maybe, the stranger you've been resisting and beating up on is actually the next version of you waiting to be introduced. That's what I'm working on. Thank you for wondering and meandering with me tonight. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share your story with me. You can find me on my website. Let me know your menopausal story. What surprised you the most? What change were you not prepared for? Leave a comment here. Share this out to someone who needs it. Because I have a feeling we're all carrying small pieces of this conversation. Maybe if we talk about it more and share them, none of us have to feel quite so alone with it. I'm Lisa Lacy, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor. This has been Midnight Menopausal Meanderings, a Notes from the Edge series, where insomnia meets insight. Until next time, let's ask better questions. Let's tell the truth. And remember, stop performing your life. Welcome to the Edge.